Today is my first day back in Israel, and it is so early that it is still going to take a few hours before anyone can see the light of a new day. As I am driving across the desert, where the perfect silence can be found to meditate, I can stop thinking about all the factors that motivated me to take the Abraham's Children class. Perhaps the most powerful one was the ignorance that currently exists in the US about the Muslim world, where I myself include among the ones that know very little about it. I also can't stop thinking about all the things I saw on the news about the Holy Land right before leaving Chicago. Sirens, missiles, explosions, and of course, the suffering of all the people caught in the crossfire. Now, after a few days of being in different towns of Israel, I am joining the Abraham's Children class, and we are about to get into Palestinian territory. As we move close to our destination, a lot of images start becoming very familiar. Being the son of immigrants that arrived to the US from Mexico and working with parishes where most of their members are immigrants too, all I can think about when I am next to this wall is a wall built between the US and Mexico border. The more I compare these two walls, the more I find similarities between them. The security wall built in the Palestinian territory was built with the purpose of preventing attacks from insurgents. In a similar way, the wall built between the US and Mexico borders was built after the 9/11 attacks to enforce national security. Although most of the people crossing the US-Mexico border are just looking for the American dream, they have been up to a point labeled as possible terrorists. One might think that because of cultural, geographical, as well as religious differences, the methods used to cross these two walls are different. But on the contrary, I have learned that they are remarkably similar. As we cross the wall, more things become familiar. Similar to crossing the border to Mexico, I am experiencing that transition from the developed to the developing world. I can see a lot of people on the side of the road, either walking or riding a donkey. Even more remarkable, as we get deeper into Palestinian territory, the skin color seems to be mostly dark brown. Unlike in Israel, where a lot of people have light dark skin, and also a lot of blonde and red hair can be seen. This raises a question in my mind. Is there a place on Earth where the developing side of the wall is white, and also the developed side is brown or dark skin? If I was to believe everything that the media says, at this point, I would be expecting to be surrounded by insurgents, armed to the teeth, or ready to stone us. Instead, all we can see is afraid people standing next to their houses, people that in fact live in precarious conditions, and that have to struggle to get the most necessary things to survive, like water. Only a little over 30% of US citizens have a passport, a very tiny percentage of the total population compared to other developed countries. Because of this, most of the exposure Americans have to other cultures, including the Muslim world, is through the media that generally focuses on a tiny part of Muslims that until about 20 years ago was displayed in a much friendlier way, perhaps like heroes. A clear example of this media effect would be Rambo. He helped our once friends, the Taliban, to defeat the Russians during the Cold War. Although the media has focused so much on a minority from Afghanistan for being responsible for the 9/11 attacks, very little attention has been paid to the fact that a lot of the money for their arms, training, and logistics actually came from US tax dollars. This new focus of the media has created not only fear towards Muslims, but also a lot of prejudice. This fear, constantly abused by the media, as well as attitudes like bigotry, have been preventing us from seeing other realities about the Muslims, like the ones who live in Palestine. These attitudes that don't let us see that there are people in Palestine who believe in peace. Young people that are willing to get into intercultural and interreligious dialogue. People like the ones attending to Bethlehem University. A Christian university where 70% of the people are Muslims and 70% of them are women. Unlike the popular belief that all Palestinians want war, they, like many others, just want peace. I was very surprised to hear from these students that whenever they have contact with citizens of Israel abroad, these encounters are generally peaceful, and that relationships have been built during these occasions. We are now in the era of Hebron, and it is just impossible not to notice the differences that exist between the illegal settlers who live in these huge houses in contrast to the precarious way of living of the Palestinians who are legally in their territory but cannot enjoy the privileges that the settlers have. Likewise, Susia, a small town in the middle of the desert that has been demolished multiple times in the past by the armed forces of Israel because it is considered to be illegally occupying the land they have lived on even before the state of Israel existed. Being here, exposed to the struggles and suffering of these people, I cannot stop thinking about the perception of them in America and how many Christians don't only approve the use of violence against them, but also justify it based on their apocalyptic understanding of the Bible. I have been shocked a few times to hear fellow Christians approving deadly force against them. Kill as many as possible so that the conflict is over soon, as if we could purchase heaven from God by supporting the suffering of others. These views, most times, are not even close to traditional Jewish or Christian understanding of the scriptures. Instead, they are just personal understanding of texts written thousands of years ago that disregard both history and theology. Attitudes that are inhuman and don't reflect the compassion of true Christianity, as Jesus advocated for love and forgiveness instead of violence. Probably the most striking fact about this experience is that this little discussed side of the Holy Land is not being introduced to us by Palestinians or Christians, but instead by Avner. Avner is a former soldier from Israel who has witnessed the abuses against Palestinians. Avner, among other soldiers, are raising their voices to let people know about this. They are Zionists that believe that Jews have the right to self-determination and to live in the land of their ancestors, but also they believe in human rights and the respect and dignity of Palestinians. We also had the opportunity to visit the Arab Hebrew Theater of Jaffa, a theater where, like its name suggests, Arabs and Jews work together and proudly represent what is still a minority in Israel, the two worlds working together. In this theater, we learned that Arabs, being the minority, speak both Hebrew and Arabic, while most Jews speak only Hebrew. This reminded me again of my experience back in the US, where people like myself, being part of a minority, speak both English and Spanish. Perhaps another question: is this a universal attitude? Can people who belong to a majority see learning the language of a minority as downgrading status? This video, by no means, is intended to be either anti-Israel or anti-America, but instead, to show a reality that oftentimes we don't see in our country, a reality that the media doesn't really want to show. On the contrary, I feel very proud that I was born in the US, that I come from a family of immigrants, that I have had exposure to many other cultures abroad, exposure that gives me a different perspective and understanding about the world outside the US borders. But most important, I feel very proud to be a disciple of Christ that is working for peace. Indeed, the purpose of this video is not to create conflict, but instead to talk about injustice without creating more injustice. If there is anything that I got out of this experience in the Holy Land, that is hope. Hope that one day there will be the existing state of Israel and also a state of Palestine that lives in true peace. Hope that allowed me to build relationships while I was there. And although most of these relationships were short term, all I can say is that it is through relationships that one builds trust. The trust that many people like me hope becomes permanent peace.